Hello, everyone. My name is Sylvia Lécuyer, and on behalf of the Azrieli Foundation, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the Gia Bombardier Theatre at Montreal's McCord Stewart Museum for this very special Azrieli Music Prizes Meet the Laureates event. This evening, I have the great privilege to speak with all four of the 2024 laureates, composers Joseph Bardavishvili, it's the first time I'm saying that name. It's a difficult one. Winner of the Azrieli Prize for Jewish Music. Yair Klartag, winner of the Azrieli Composition for Jewish Music. Jordan Nobles, winner of the Azrieli Commission for Canadian Music. And Juan Trigos, winner of the first ever Azrieli Commission for International Music. Created in 2014 by Sharon Azrieli for the Azrieli Foundation, the Azrieli Music Prizes offer opportunity for the discovery, the creation, the performance, and the celebration of excellence in music composition. The prize package awarded to each laureate is valued as $200,000 Canadian dollars. It's comprised of a $50,000 cash prize, 3 international performances, including the upcoming gala concert on Monday, October 28th, and a commercial recording of their prize-winning work. This makes AMP the top competition for music composition in Canada and one of the most significant in the world. And now it's a great joy to introduce Joseph, Yair, Jordan, and Juan to you. Welcome to you all. I will start with Joseph Bardavishvili, who is a winner of this prize for Jewish music. Joseph Bardavishvili is born in Georgia. He got his doctorate in composition at the University of State Conservatory of Tbilisi, and he settled in Israel, where he is, amongst other things, he was musical director of the International Biennale for Contemporary Music, Tempus Fugit, and he's a composer in residence to Israel Camerata, Jerusalem. Joseph, you're a teacher, a mentor. You're very often asked to give master classes and be on juries, but most of the time you compose because you have many works at your past, 100 works in fact, 5 operas, 5 ballets, 4 symphonies, concertos for piano, violin, almost every instrument. You've written also, we don't be sorry. You also written chamber music, string quartets, quintets, and choral music and songs, and also music for films and theater. But when I heard your music at first, I immediately remembered that you were born in Georgia. And I know that Georgia choral music is considered in your home country a national treasure. You were really mostly influenced by that, I suppose. And that's why you're bringing us Light to My Path, which is a choral fantasy for mixed choir, saxophone, percussion, piano. So tell me about this immersion that you had all your life your young life in Georgian choral music. How important was it to you?
כן. בגיאורגיה השיר זה כמעט בן אדם נולד אז הוא שר, כן?
In Georgia, when one is born, one starts to sing.
ובמיוחד המוזיקה המקהלתית היא אחד הדברים הגדולים שבאומנות הקלאסית גיאורגית, עתיקה גם.
And in particular, the art of choral singing is one of the foundational aspects of Georgian culture in antiquity and to this day.
היא לא חד-קורי, היא תמיד רב-קולי. זה מה שמאוד מייחד אותו. זה לא מוזיקה ישראלית או יהודית שהוא חד-קולי או דו-קולי, בוא נגיד. המוזיקה גיאורגית הוא תמיד רב-קולי. אז אני גדלתי תמיד במקום כל אחד שמעתי תמיד 3 קולות.
Georgian vocal music is always comprised of multiple vocal lines rather than just 1 or 2. And so I grew up immersed in many vocal voices.
זה בן. שני זה בבית כנסת. אני גדלתי בבית מסורתית, אז אני תמיד הייתי בבית כנסת. שבת, חגים, אז אני שמעתי הרבה סגנונות. מהקלייזמר, מהיידיש סגנון, מהספרדית סגנון. זה האופי עד היום אני חי עם זה.
And another very big inspiration that I live with to this day, that is a part of me, is music that I heard at the synagogue where I grew up. And I, for holidays and Fridays and Saturdays, would go to the synagogue and hear the beautiful music there, Yiddish music, klezmer music, things that remain with me.
And I have to apologize to you, Gili Loftus, because I didn't introduce you, because you will interpret for Joseph, since you are interpreting from the Hebrew. And the work we're gonna talk later about the language that you use in your music too, all of them, because the multiplicity of language that we will hear in that concert is just incredible. Living language, but extinct language coming back to life. I would like to have a word with Yair Klartag before we go on. Yair, you are also an Israeli composer. You're currently living in Tel Aviv. You studied at Tel Aviv University, and you've been commissioned...
With Yosef, among others. He was one of my teachers.
Good. And you have been also received commissions for lots of organizations around the world, festivals everywhere, received numerous awards, very important one. And currently you teach composition and analysis at the Jerusalem Academy of Music. Now you bringing us a choir piece called Parable of the Palace, and it's written for mixed choir and 4 double basses. I could not ask you why 4 double bass. It's the first time I hear such an extraordinary instrumentation.
Yes, so I guess it comes from 2 different directions that kind of materializes when I imagine this piece. One is kind of purely musical. There is something in this kind of monochromatic nature of a choir. And there is something for me very special about a choir in the sense of individuality, because the human voice is so individual and singular, and it has so much more information than, let's say, a solo instrument. But then a choir is, in a sense, so much more monochromatic than an orchestra, for example. So there is something there that in the choir that you have a lot of individuals, but then you have also kind of a loss of individuality. And then I think I wanted to extend it a bit, this kind of idea of a choir to a choir of another instrument. And there was something about the double bass that first there is this way of these 2 dimensions, the 2 layers of the double bass, this kind of low, the low fundamentals, and then also the singing voice that was, for me, a really interesting thing to melt with the choirs, with the choral sound. And then also it has to do with the conceptual idea of the text of the piece that comes from a famous parable of Maimonides, from a famous book of his called Guide for the Perplexed. And it's a very geometrical parable. It describes kind of metaphorically a situation when there is a king at some place in a palace, and then there are different circles of people around it. So there are people that are really far, that are outside the city of the palace. There are people that are in the city. There are people that are in the city, but with their back to the palace. He just has many, many, many groups of people, and this is his sort of metaphor, and then he expands the metaphor. I mean, we can maybe talk later about how I understood it, but this idea of geometric space, of something in the center, and I understand the king in the center as, for me, represents sort of irrationality. So there is in the piece what I call the sort of a swamp of irrationality, of these low double bass sounds, and then you kind of go farther and farther away from it. And this symmetry and this very geometrical construction somehow brought to mind this instrumentation.
We'll get back to you later to talk also about the story, because the parable of the palace is very interesting. The text, the provenance of the text is also, I want to hear about that later. But now I would like to have a word with Jordan Nobles. Jordan, being a Canadian composer and winner of the Canadian Music Prize, you've been awarded Composer of the Year, Juno Awards. You've been nominated Composer of the Year many times. You also receive commissions. But what is interesting is also, beside your active composing career, you're involved into Redshift Music, an event presenter and recorder. You want to continue. You want to help also, or make known the work of other composers. You are a kind of an evangelist in a way for that, in a way, and very active person. But you bring us today you decided. I must say that the composers had the choice of adding instruments, up to 4 different instruments to the choir, and you decided not to add instruments, but you use the choir sometimes like an instrument. We see that, and you bring us a cantata called Canata, which is derived from the St. Lawrence Iroquoian word for Canada, so we can imagine. But your music is imposing to you. It comes to you through your travels, and you just came back actually few days ago from a travel in the Arctic. Did you actually went through all Canada? Have you seen the whole place everywhere? You
All
seem
of it.
to all of it.
Got
all
it
of
all.
Yeah.
I was struck while traveling about the impossibility of seeing all of Canada, even in my entire lifetime. If I traveled every day, I've been here in Montreal for 7 days now, and I haven't seen all of Montreal. So how am I going to see all of Canada? There's so much of the north I haven't seen, and it's just sort of an endless excitement of exploration, because you can travel here and then there, and next time you go back to the same place, it's different. There's different, a different season or a new experience that area in a different way. I've been to a number of places 3 or 4 times, but there's 1,000 places I haven't been to. So no, I have not seen all of Canada.
But some people travel and bring back journals or photos, and when you travel, do you actually have music coming to your head when you travel? Does it?
Well, I was going to, when we were going to just like travel across Canada, and I would write this piece while traveling. When that seemed to be a really good idea at first, and then while traveling, it seemed like a really bad time to stop traveling to compose. Oh, you guys go on the hike, then have fun. I'll sit here in the hotel room and compose. Like, no, I kept going out, so I didn't do any of that. But being in the space, being on top of a mountain or in the middle of the prairie or any of these vast spaces in Canada always gives me a feeling of, well, what everybody has, I suppose, a feeling of awe and grandeur that there isn't music in my head, but there's that feeling. And then you want to come home and put that feeling into the music as best you can. So that's sort of how I'm depicting the vastness and the landscape of Canada as best I can, based on the feelings I had when I was standing there.
So it's all descriptive and emotional at the same time, and then the choir has the duty to reproduce those spaces. I'm very curious, and everybody must be very curious to see how it is expressed in the music. Thank you, Jordan. Joan Trigos. Juan is better. Juan Trigos. You were born in Mexico. You live in the U.S. You've been appointed recently assistant professor in music and composition at the University of Kentucky in Lexington. But you're also a conductor, and you conduct a lot of 20th century music and contemporary music. You have commissioned music yourself, too. And you are currently the music director and principal conductor in many other ensembles. And you also have a very strong interest in education. I think it's for you very important. You bring to us a cantata oratorio. It seems to be a mixed genre of things for mixed chorus and ensemble, including amplified flute, trombone, lots of percussion. I saw the list. It's quite impressive. I would just want to see that on the stage. And no, don't be sorry. It's a lot of fun. And piano and keyboards. But what is more important is that what you bring us is a piece of music that you, in your own conception, call abstract folklore. I never heard that expression. How do you define abstract folklore?
Well, I'll try. So basically, it's to make the difference to popular. I thought to use the word popular, but I choose folklore because it's less contaminated.
Yes.
It has kind of purity. It doesn't exist purity, no? But it is attached to the ground, to the traditions. It's more direct, no, in a sense, no? So I'm not against the popular music. the contrary. No, I really love it. But the folklore, in that sense, is the main spirit, the first impact you have when you listen to music. No, at least all this music through my own filter that makes that sense of I don't know. I always put this example, like the cucaracha we were talking the other day, no?
The cucaracha?
Cucaracha,
Okay.
everybody knows cucaracha, no? So when you sing, so if you write it down, it will be something like la cucaracha, which is boring. And no Mexican will sing that way. No one. So it will be more like la cucaracha, ya no puede comer, whatever, no? And then you have the contamination, like, for example, la cucaracha, which is not Mexican, something. Well, now they are doing that too, no? But, so I picked the example in the middle to show that feeling, no? The first I don't know how to call it, the contact, no? With that.
Yeah.
So through my filter, assimilating all those musics, and I put it back, no? So sometimes I use folk songs or other materials, but the most of the time I abstract the way, like in this piece, no? I didn't use any folkloristic melody or just that feeling, no?
And as we can imagine, because hearing you doing this, explaining that with so much vivacity, it is very much alive. Your music is full of vitality, I could hear.
Well, I don't know what to say. But the thing, for example, this piece has this imaginary, well, it is closer to the concept of Bartok's imaginary folklore. No, it's not exactly the same, but
okay.
it has that kind of image. So, for example, all the symmetries I use in this piece, no, is not faking, but it's feeling that spirit of the Indian music or the original Mexican people, of course, with all the influence by Spain and other countries. But, for example, you have things like. Let me remember the text. So, cerca de las piedras vieron cómo se erguía cerca de las piedras. No? So that kind of rhythm, no, influenced a lot the music in Spanish or in Nahuatl, which is the Aztec language, well, or Mexica, the proper way is Mexica, and there are a lot of people speaking Nahuatl still, no, in Mexico City and around, no, and other dialects derivate from that language, no. So that kind of symmetry in the language.
We'll get back to the languages, as I said before, because it's so fascinating work we're going to hear. But now I would like to have a little bit of music, and it is time to maybe hear a piece by Joseph Badanashvili, a pièce for solo guitar. Qui s'appelle Sola for guitar, which is structurally reminiscent of a ballad. And there is lots of romanticism in your music, I realize, Joseph Badanashvili. And it tells a story of love, of the many faces of love. It's at a time where you were thinking of two different cultures, Ladino and Spanish. And I would like us to introduce that piece for us.
בגדול זה גיטרה, זה ורסיה לגיטרה, אבל כתוב לכל בתזמורת.
This is a version for guitar, but originally it is for voice and orchestra.
אחד הזמרים הגדולים ישראלים הזמינו ממני לכתוב בלדינו, אני לא יודע לדינו, אבל אני מכיר מאוד טוב תרבות לדינו.
A very well-known Israeli performer had commissioned this piece from me and asked that it be written in Ladino, which is a language that I'm familiar with but don't know myself.
בשיר בגדול היא מדברת שהיא לבד, סולה כמו סולנס, סולה אסטמונדו, כוכבים, תגידו, לאן אני הולכת, האהבה נגמרה, כאילו עצובה מאוד בגדול.
So the speaker is very sad, and she says how alone she is, Sola.
Sola is alone, in fact, yeah. So, well, thank you very much. Benjamin Diamond is going to play for us Sola for guitar by Joseph Badanashvili. Lots of nostalgia and love and romanticism in that piece, which is, I think, quite far from what we're going to hear in your cantata that we're going to hear, Joseph Baranashvili. I'd like to come back to you to talk about the language of the work that you're bringing to us on the gala that we're going to hear. Light to My Path, this choral fantasy. It's in 4 movements, and it is written, as you said, a reflection on the act of working, singing, writing music, thinking, researching. How did you compose that piece, and on which language did you put it? It is in great part composed on the Psalm 121, and also on a piece of literature which was written recently for one of the movements. So how do you put all that together? The Psalms, the language, it's written in Hebrew and English.
הרבה תלמידים שלי אומרים שלכתוב בעברית נורא קשה.
They say that writing in Hebrew is very difficult.
הם מעדיפים לכתוב באנגלית.
And they prefer to write in English.
אני חושב שזה טעות גדול.
I think this is a big mistake.
עברית היא שפה פשוט פנטסטית.
Hebrew is a fantastic language.
ואני, שהגעתי מגיאורגיה, למדתי עברית, בוא נגיד כמו עולה חדש, עדיין חושב שזה צריך לשמוע עברית, לשמוע איתו, אז להוציא משהו המורכב שיש בתוך השפה הזה.
And I, who came to Israel from Georgia and learned Hebrew at a later age, see the beautiful potential of this language and how expressive it is.
ואני הלחנתי הרבה יצירות דווקא בעברית, במיוחד שירים, זה תפילות, או זה יכול להיות שירים המודרניים, בכיוון אחד להגדיל המילה, בגלל זה אצלם, אתה יודעת, אות לא רק אות, זה גם מספר, המספר זה גם אות דמיון. זאת אומרת, הללויה לא סתם הללויה, יש לו כל מיני דברים אחרים בתוכו. אז אם אתה מוצא איתם, אז אתה כן שולט על המילה, ואתה אומר מה שאתה רוצה להגיד. כן, סוג של גמטריה גם.
Giri? Help us a little bit.
תחזור על זה שוב. כן. על מה שאמרת?
אני אמרתי כאילו, לכל מילה יש לה גם אות. מאותיות יש לה סוג של גמטריה, מספרים. המספרים, אות, זה הכל מגדיל המילה, ואתה יכול לשחק איתם, וזה מה שאני אוהב.
So I've composed over the years many works in Hebrew, expressly so, and in Hebrew you can assign numerical value to letters and vice versa, and so a word can thus be expanded in all kinds of interesting and meaningful ways, and this is something that I've found very meaningful in my work.
In that piece, and I had the privilege of hear a little bit of the rehearsals this week. There was a moments where you asked the choir to sing, and this is the psalm, particularly in the last movement I heard, with appassionato and molto espressivo, which is not what I was expecting when you are putting into music a piece that could be almost religious or a psalm. How do you get that passion into that music?
כן, אני מבין, פרק אחרון, פרק 50, מדובר שבן אדם בעצמו הוא שונא. הוא אמר, עשיתי הרבה טעויות, עשיתי הרבה, חננו אדוני, חננו. כאילו מרביץ בעצמו, זה לא קורה, לא הרבה אנשים יכולים להרביץ בעצמנו, תמיד אומרים, אנחנו טובים, אבל אנחנו אומרים שאנחנו לא טובים. זה מצב מאוד אקספרסיבי וטרגי, הייתי להגיד.
So in this final movement, the text that is taken from Psalms says, have mercy on me, I have done bad things. And so from this state of mind, there's a lot of passion, a lot of energy, a lot of...
חננו אדוני, חננו כי רב סבל ובוס, חננו.
Mais c'est tellement expressif. I
Yes.
love the way you do it, and the language is so
אבל זה
expressive.
אפשר
Yeah.
להשאיר בכל מיני כיוונים, אפשר לעשות גם צחוק ממנו.
You can, of course, sing this or express this in many different ways. It can be made humorous as well.
אז פרמטרים תמיד הם גדולים. אפשר להגיע למעלה ולהגיע למטה. אז אני משחק עם המצב, עם הרוח של בן אדם.
So I enjoy playing with these different possibilities, either go high or low, or express the whole spectrum of what this can be.
I like theater. I like theater.
Absolutely.
I like Gesta. Gesta.
And now you ask the choir to bring
Yes.
us. It's quite a beautiful challenge that you give to the Montreal Symphony Choir today. I find
Of course, of course.
fantastic. Thank you very much. We'll get back to you later. Yair Kartlag, your piece, you explained to us why it is with 4 double basses. But what really impressed me also a lot is that the language you are using is a language that is not in use anymore. And it's a very special, it's a Judeo-Arabic language, what's used by the Jews in Spain and the Arabic countries in the Middle Ages. So how did you rediscover that language, and why did you write in that piece? And I couldn't help asking myself if it is related a little bit with the events that are happening in the world today.
Yeah. So it's actually something that happened to me during the composition process that I didn't plan in advance, which I really like also in composing, where I have an idea and it's usually very abstract, and I like that reality contaminate a bit my ideas in a sense. And in this case, I chose the text initially, and it's a text by Maimonides. Is one of the most important Jewish thinker from the 12th century. And I intended to actually write it in Hebrew. Like, I chose the text in Hebrew, and that was my plan. And I started actually to work on the piece like that, because the beginning of the piece doesn't have words. The words enter, I think, after a minute or two. So I actually started to compose. And then when I got to the point where I actually needed to put melody to the words, I had the feeling that the language is not as nice as I want, in a way. And then I knew it, but I kind of remembered, I actually didn't write it in Hebrew. It's a translation, because he was living in the 12th century in Egypt, and he wrote it in this language, in Jewish Arabic. It's a language that doesn't exist. It's a language that Jews in Egypt and like North Africa and the Middle East were speaking at the time. They write it in Hebrew letters, but it's Arabic. And it's kind of a mixture. Sometimes they use some words in Hebrew. So I can kind of read it because it's in Hebrew, but I don't really know how to pronounce it. So I thought, okay, how do I do it? And I was lucky. I asked some friends I know who are a bit know Arabic, and they sent me from one to the other. And I ended up finding this guy who's maybe 80, who was a professor for kind of Middle Eastern studies in Jerusalem, and who's also himself from Iraq. So somehow he's specialized, he really knows this language, and he's able to speak it almost like as a native, because it's like very similar to what he spoke in Iraq. And he was really generous, and he was just recorded to me all this on WhatsApp. He sent me on WhatsApp messages, like really all the text and it was so beautiful and also very surprising, because it's written in Hebrew alphabet. I thought I know what it is, but it's actually completely different. Like, there would be something like, I don't know, the letter H means there ihu or something like this. It's like you would never expect that, and it was so musical. And it really inspired then the rest of the piece to like really go with this special pronunciation and language, and definitely was for me something really useful to write this piece during the specific time I was writing it. And it's kind of something I look for, I guess, in doing music and art, of finding an alternative. Just saying, okay, here is a different possibility of things, borders in different places, and things are much more complicated than the simplicity that we live in now. And this language itself is such a representation of this, of it just can be different.
Absolutely fascinating. Just before you go after the language, introduce us to a bit to Maimonides. You said he's a very, very important writer, and for us who don't know him, why is he so important?
Yeah. Well, he's just an extremely important Jewish thinker. Like every city in Israel has a street named after him. I would say is maybe almost like a little bit like a Jewish Da Vinci or something like this, like Leonardo da Vinci, because he's just done everything. So he was really one of the most important sort of rabbis, a theologian. Like the books he wrote, the religious books he wrote are really still being learned today and being followed. But then he was also a really famous doctor. Like a really important, like actually pushed forward the study of medicine. Was, I think, the doctor of the Egyptian king at some point even. And for example, in Israel, still doctors, when they swear, they don't use the Hippocrates.
Yeah.
They use his. He wrote a different one, so which is still used. So it did this, and then he was also a philosopher. So the book I'm using is a beautiful book that's written in second person. So you write it to a specific person who's kind of perplexed. It's called Guide for the Perplexed. So it's a person who's kind of confused because he's Jewish, he's religious, but he also reads Aristotle and he reads Neoplatonic philosophy, and he doesn't know how to reconcile the two of them. So Maimonides just wrote this book to reconcile religion and rationalism, or let's say Neoplatonic ideas. And this is this book, and it's a really, like we're reading it today, it's for me unbelievable how deep it is. There is also a part of him that I really relate. He's a bit of also a mathematician, a scientist. So I mean, there are a lot of things there that he would talk about rationality and talk about rational numbers or irrational numbers in the context of irrationality. Like it's a very, very complex and beautiful thing that you wouldn't expect from like a rabbi. That
Absolutely fascinating, and it goes well with your passion too, because you like mathematics and rationality and computer, and it all goes with you. That's a fantastic thing. Jordan Nobles, you have a challenge there in describing Canada in your piece of music. You had to find a language. How can you have spaces and things like that? Which words will you use? What did you decide to put into music for bringing us in those spaces?
Well, a few years ago, I wrote a piece for choir, and I had to come up with what was the text going to be. And my idea was to use the names of stars. And then I had a bunch of names of stars that I could choose from, and I got to choose all the beautiful ones, the Alula or Zubin al-Janubi, words that had music in them already. And it was just so easy to write that piece. So I thought, I'll do the same with Canada. I'll travel across Canada and use the names, the place names of, not the cities, but the rivers or the mountains or the coast, like my BC coast that I love, and use the names of those places as the text for the piece. But as I was doing it, as I was researching places I'd been or places I was going to go, I just sort of came to realize that the colonial settler names of the people that discovered that mountain, like Mount Robson or the Fraser River or Mackenzie Beach, they're kind of unimaginative. And as well, they're not the original names of these places. So I decided that I don't want to use the settler names. I want to use the original indigenous name of that mountain or that bay or that river, which led to way more research. And then through consultation and a lot of research, I realized that those names are not, they're based on stories or histories of the area. I'll give you an example. There's a place called Black Tusk, which is a little mountain. It's this amazing black tusk of a mountain that sticks out amongst all other snowy white mountains in BC. and it's named Black Tusk because it looks like a black tusk. But the original indigenous name means landing place of the thunderbird, which is, because it lands there and it's a thunderbird, so it just scorched the earth in that place. But that was not my story to tell. So what I ended up doing was taking tiny pieces, phonemes or fragments of words from all the different First Nations names, place names throughout Canada, and sort of mixing them up and using them as texture and not as text to honor the original names and not contribute to the colonial settler names that we all are familiar with. And so they're kind of, it's sort of a universal language, if you will, because it's like a K sound or a like, well, Haida Gwy, which used to be the Queen Charlotte, I took the word Gwy, or just the beginning of like Gwy, which is a cool little sound to sing. So we have all these phonemes throughout the, and many, many, many of them throughout the choral work to depict the land, but not any specific mountain or anything, because it's just that syllable, which, can be indicative of a couple different places. But all my favorite places are in there.
So the sound was a musical element that you abstract the musical element of the names to make them a discourse. And you also use the choir to do other sounds that will bring us into a different space, because there are parts where there are no words in your work. What do they do?
Okay, well, for instance, and I'll give you one of, because I was trying to sort of keep all of the names kind of secret. They're buried in there. It's all just texture, and they're making sounds with their mouths, which are words that we know. But the journey starts at my home, because you have to leave somewhere. And near my home, there's a place called Kate's Park, which I don't know who Kate is, but apparently it's her park. That's our name for it, but the original name, the Tsleil-Waututh name for it, is Weyowitchin, and that means faces the wind, because if you're standing there in Kate's Park and the ocean is there, and it's windy. So my piece starts with the wind sounds. The choir is making wind sounds, and if you strain to listen, you'll hear wow, but not really. And so that's the journey begins at the windy shores of BC, goes all the way to Cape Spear in Newfoundland, and then kind of back.
Thank you. You bring us in beautiful spaces, and sometimes I had the impression that we are going through some kind of a snowstorm, and we have in the middle of that musically very solid chords that are very diatonic in a way. We have some repères, we have some post in the travel, and I find it extremely interesting. Thank you, Jordan. Juan, this Symmetrias Prehispanicas has many aspects. I would like to talk about the language that you use. Again, it's a language that is not really spoken today. There was many languages in that. What did you decide to use for the text?
Well, it's not the first time I use Nahuatl. No, so I have my first cantata uses Nahuatl, Latin, Spanish, and Nahuatl. No, so, and then I wrote my fourth symphony has a text by Nezahualcóyotl, which is also some text here in purely Nahuatl.
And is it still spoken today?
Yes. So it's I really don't know the numbers, but something like 1 million people who speaks, no, around Mexico City, and all the dialects, no, so around, no. So of course we are talking about the poet. For this particular piece, I pick my father, who's a playwright, novelist, and a great man and a great writer. So he pick different pieces of many texts by poetry from the 15th century, 14th century, and put a kind of libretto, no, all together. So we have anonymous texts And we have also a text by poets very well known to us. No, one of them is Nezahualcóyotl. So coyotl, Kawiori, no, comes from that's Nahuatl, like chocoatl, chocolate.
Ah,
That's Nahuatl, no?
what
So
a discovery.
means bitter water, chocoatl, because the original was bitter, no, with water.
Yes, of course.
So we have many, no? Avocado, a corruption of aguacatl. That's Nahuatl. Okay, so
Starting to
Mexico
taste
or
good.
Mexico. So actually, the English pronunciation is closer to the Nahuatl because you say Mexico, no, and the original is Mexico. But the X in Spain, it wasn't. They use it for any strange phonetic, no? So it sounds like Oaxaca, no? X, Oaxaca, Mexico. So if you go to Spain, they use the J, no? Not
Yeah.
the X anymore, no? But everybody says Mexico, but not Mexico. Mexica from Mexico, no? Okay, it's crazy.
It's
I know.
the whole Macedonia.
But, so my father puts this text, making a story. So I call it cantata oratoria, but the cantata, I don't need to say, comes from Italian, no? To sing, cantare, no? And then it's a bunch of text you put all together, no, but can be anything. But the oratorio usually has some theatrical things. You can represent it or not. So it's both things, no? So we will have some light for this performance and some projections that shows that thing, no? But can be played without the representation or with the representation, no? It's written very simple, but in that sense, no? And this is, well, I wouldn't like to say a story, but it represents many aspects of that those texts. So my father called it invenciones poéticas, which means poetic inventions, no? It's basically the story. So where we are, where is my God, no? That's a kind of ritornello or rondeau, no? In the piece. And then we have the story of the fundamental. So the second movement, for example, speaks about the poetry, the prophecy about Huitzilopochtli, which is the god of the war that promised the land to the Mexica. And they discovered when you will find an eagle eating a snake in a cactus, that will be your land, no? So the image, if you see so there is a very funny argument with my wife. She's Italian, she's here, with the colors of Mexican flag, right? So I say, you steal it from us. Well, the thing is, in Mexican is exactly the same colors, but it has that representation with the eagle and the snake eating the
And we're going to
cactus.
see that because
Yes,
it's
you
a
will.
family affair, your work, because your father wrote the libretto and your brother
make the paintings.
made the paintings that will be projected and showing us that eagle and everything.
Yeah, there are many pictures of
Pictures,
that. No?
yeah.
So the one we know now is the modern one, but we have the Spanish versions, the indigenous versions. Well, and for example, that is one of the stories. And you pass through that and through the poetry, which is really about the flower. No, the flower is a representation of the heart or the ephemeris of the life. No? So they use it as one of the most beautiful things. No? So and I was thinking about the Nezahualcóyotl, which is one of we call it the king poet, because he was a ruler also. At the same time, from Texcoco, which is so now exists the lake, but once it was like they call it the Mexican Venice, no? Because I hold the lake, and he was also an architect, which is close. Yair
To
was
Yair
saying, no?
was saying, yeah.
He was a ruler, poet, and an architect. He built the aqueduct. It's still there, you know, in the north of Mexico City, in Texcoco. You can see that aqueduct, no, which is fantastic. No, he built all the bridges in the middle, like the canal, the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal. So basically separating the water from the land with some technical, I don't remember now the technique, but it's basically you put a stick on the
On the
water,
ground, on the water.
and then another, and you put stones
Okay,
in the middle.
okay,
no?
and then you create-
and you create land,
land,
basically.
absolutely.
Then chinampas. So that's the
That's
word.
interesting.
That's the word.
You won the prize for international music, so you're bringing us another aspect of your culture in a fantastic, colorful, and very vivid way. And I'm so happy that we created that.
I'm happy
prize.
to.
Yeah. And you seem to have so much fun with what you're doing. Let's have a little bit more music, then we'll come back to you, gentlemen. Actually, yeah, why not your music? You wrote 12 variations and fugue on the Folia de España. That was in 2015. And the Folia de España is a work that had been used by many other composers. It's a very famous, I think we recognize the tune probably. And this musical language draws from the folklore of Spain. The folklore, or I cannot use that word in front of you because you're abstract folklore. Yeah. So anyway, so tell us a few words about this piece, please.
Well, of course, the Folia de España, which is strange because folia, it's an Italian word, no?
Yeah.
But everybody knows folia means madness, no?
Madness.
So in Spanish we don't say locura, no? So Folia de España, but the name remains, no? And it was, the original is a kind of standard to improvise. Bim, bam, ba-dim, bam. And we have thousands of compositions like that. So, but the idea come from a close friend of mine, Dieter Hennings, which is a fantastic guitar player, and organize a kind of commission. What's the name of that? The consort commission, so with other guitar players, based on Ponce image of the variations. No? Ponce wrote the famous 24 variations and fugue on a Folia de España, no? Which is very strange, no? Starts in the harmonization, it's particular, no? So I wrote 12 because I used double, like the equivalence to go to the dominant and then go back to the tonic, no? So 12 because it are double variations and the fugue.
Okay, are we hearing the whole thing now?
No, we are listening just the theme and 2 variations, right? Yeah.
Okay, well, Emily, it's up to you. Those variations to the Folia de España. much, Emily Hobday. What a pleasure to hear this tune with the new variations, I must say, because we heard it so many times with so many instruments. Thank you, Juan Trigos. We'll have a last little round with all of you before we hear a last piece later that is a piece that Yair brought to us. But first of all, I would like one last question for you, Joseph. Light to My Path tells us that there is hope. It's a piece of looking up and finding solace and help, because that's what the psalm says. Did you write that piece in a sign of hope for a best future? What is the profound signification of that piece for you?
כל הטקסטים אני לקחתי מהתהילים.
All the texts are taken from the book of Psalms.
Yeah.
ומספיק לקחת שורה אחת באיזה חיים שלם.
It's in one line you can have a whole life depicted. It's sufficient to use just a few
תלוי איך
words.
אתה קורא איתו.
It depends how you read it.
ובדיוק זה מה שמעניין, בגלל זה תמיד זה מצב רוח מסוים, מצב רוח של בן אדם. זה יכול להיות מאוד אגרסיבי, יכול להיות מאוד פנימי, יכול להיות מאוד טרגי. זה הפנורמה של המצבים של רוח בן אדם, זה מה שהכי מעניין לי עד היום.
In this text you find a whole panorama of human emotions and human states of mind. And in one line you can have something painful, something hopeful, something dramatic.
אנחנו סתם מפחיתים קהל, אני לא רוצה להפחית, יותר מדי רצינים, אני חושב.
He's worried that I worry that I scare
I'm very serious.
that I'm too serious. But
אנחנו גם מחייכים הרבה, מוזיקה.
we also smile a lot when we make music.
אל תחשבו שאנחנו רק יותר מדי רציניים.
Don't think we're so serious all the time.
אבל זה אנחנו משחקים, כן. כן. וזה 5 פרקים, וזה גם סוג מבט היסטורי על העם ישראלי.
The piece is comprised of 5 movements, and they also represent a kind of historical look at the Israeli people over time.
יהודים היו בחו"ל, היו בגלות, אז הם השפיעו, גם היו מושפע. זה מאוד מעניין לי השילובים של תרבויות.
While the Jewish people were in exile, they were also influenced by many cultures and their surroundings, and in turn influenced them as well. And I'm very interested in this exchange of cultures and histories.
אז זה מהבעיניים כמעט עד היום. זה סוג של הדרך, מה שאנחנו עוברים, העם שלנו.
Our path has led us, in this piece is depicted from the Middle Ages until essentially this very day.
מתישהו, אני חושב, מתי שאני לא אהיה במקום הזה, יהיה שהוא בשמיים, כולם יבינו זה, אני גדול כתבתי, יצרתי יצירה אחת, כמו סיפורים של בלזק. כאילו משהו אחד. זה הדרך, דרך ל.
At some point when I will no longer be on this terrestrial and be up in the heavens, it will be understood that this piece is essentially one long path in a Balzacian kind of way.
כן, בלזקיאן סטוריס, כן. זה הרעיון, זה הרעיון בגדול.
That's the general idea.
אז לגבי האור, אני רוצה עזרה של הקדוש ברוך הוא, שאני כן, הוא נותן לי אור של ללכת קדימה.
So as far as the light is concerned, I wish for help from the one who generates the light to help me forwards in this long path.
שלא לאבד כיוון.
So I don't lose my way.
That's a very, very important. I wish we'll have time to talk about the other works that you work for theater and film music, and your imagination is so diverse, and you're interested in basically everything that's alive you would write about. Give me one example of a film music that you did.
אני גם...
דוגמה של סרט.
יש סרטים שהגיעו כמעט עד האוסקר, אז נכנסו בפול. יש הרבה סרטים, סוף עשיתי 60 ומשהו סרטים.
I've made about 60 films, and some have almost made it to the Oscars, or perhaps made it to the Oscars.
And 72 theatrical music.
72 pieces for theater.
I like music.
I like music. That's one of the first things you told me when you arrived this afternoon. I like music. That's why. I'm sorry I write so much because I like it. That's wonderful. Yair, you also like music, obviously, but you have this passion, I mentioned that briefly before, for rationality and numbers and science. And I wonder how you combine all this. What it is natural for you to go into esoteric research and reading about mysticism, and how does it work?
Yeah. Good question. Maybe I can say this. I feel like when I speak to my fellow composers, to my friends who write music too, I kind of feel like I can divide to two types of composers that I notice. So there is this kind of the type of composers who are a little bit messy in their life, and they live. Everything is they're always late and very disorganized. It's very like the stereotype of a composer, right? And then when they come to write music, they really have to organize. It's like the space to like where they know the rules, where they set the rules, where everything is organized, and when they have control. And I feel like with myself that I'm kind of the opposite. like I'm very kind of structured and organized in my thought, very rational. And this place of music in my life, I discovered through the years what the need I have is the opposite, is to never know what's going to happen, to be impulsive, to be irrational, to look for this sort of thing. It's really, this is kind of what I need music for in my life. I almost can say that sometimes I have the feeling that I'm so planned and rational that I'm missing out. Like I see people that are just so impulsive, and I feel like, oh, I'm missing something from life, and music is the space for me to kind of fulfill it. So it's something that always exists. Like I love to not know what's going to happen and to suddenly cut. Things always break and cut very abruptly and very surprisingly in my music. But then, like I always have also the things that are natural for me, of like doing research and and these sort of things are very natural for me. But then hopefully you hear in the piece there with all these things. Then there is moments where just things are going to unexpected places, hopefully.
Well, absolutely. But also what we see in your rationality is the way that the choir has to be very disciplined, because it is difficult. And it requires a lot of regularity and discipline. Very, very beautiful. Well, probably in a moment we'll hear a piece of music by you. But before that, I will have to have a last word with Jordan and with Juan. Jordan, when you found all those little pieces to describe, pieces of words to describe the places of Canada, you also included the sound of the wind. But what struck me also in your music, that you inserted at moments very, very tonal chord coming into your music. Did you write a structure of chords before writing the piece, or does it come naturally in the evolution? It's very striking that you have those tonal posts in your work.
Often I've come up with the harmonies before I've come up with the notes.
Yeah.
So I usually, in this case, it was actually quite interesting because I came up with a slow harmonic motion, which seemed a bit too slow after a while. So the conductor accelerates constantly throughout the piece until about the golden mean, about 2/3 through, where he decelerates to the end. And it sort of increases the speed of the harmonic motion. But of course, throughout the motion, there's always these patterns which, if you continue them, will land into very harmonic, very consonant areas where the choir gets to finally get a break in tune. And because they're doing all this, and then like, oh, okay, good, that's an E minor chord. I know what that is. There we are. And so that is just sort of a joy for me to come up with these patterns of harmonic motion, which result in happy moments of confluence, I guess.
It seems to be a moment of happiness and joy too by the choirs, because they themselves realize what's coming. There is an extraordinary evolution in the languages. Oh, here we are, and we hear that chord. It's very...
The sense of arrival.
Yes.
Home.
Yeah. It's important when you travel. Yeah, at one point you arrive somewhere and feel at home. I'll have a last word with you, Juan, about since you won the first international prize, you brought lots of richness from your culture and your abstract culture and everything. What did you think of this experience? Because you are the first winner of this prize. What was it for you?
That's difficult to answer. Well, of course, I feel very happy to have the opportunity to have the piece played by these great performers. And here in Canada, which is, well, Montreal, which is a very musical city, important. And, well, I'm still very happy about that. So I don't know how to describe it, but it's always, it surprises me. You know? When Sharon called me, actually, it was a funny thing because she called me and left me a message on my phone, no? Because I was moving to Lexington, so we were expecting our furniture at that moment, and I couldn't answer the phone at that moment. So I heard the message, and then I called her back and I say, "So can I help you?" To say, "Well, I received a message from you, so I wanted to say, no, I don't know you." I say, okay, no problem. Have a nice day, you too, whatever. And 10 minutes after, he called me. Oh, I am sorry. You're Juan Trigos, right? And it was funny, and we laughed, but it took me by surprise. No? So, of course, I'm still happy, and I will remember that. For my wife enjoyed very much that experience.
Yeah, well, it's a good story because we know the spontaneity and the enthusiasm of Sharon, and it fits very well with the Sharon we know. Thank you, Juan. We'll have a last piece of music now by Yair, and I kept it for the last. We're not supposed to do it this way, but the last because your piece is called Instabilities. And it is an important word. It is a response to maybe the constant state of instability we all have in our life. I'm sure everybody, in a composer's life, it must be quite unstable too. I mean, I'm sure it is. Why did you choose to write that piece, and what did you try to bring to it?
It's a piece that I wrote during COVID time, like hardcore COVID time, like I think lockdowns.
Okay.
And it has 3 movements that are all coming. So it's has very specific kind of really interesting natural phenomena that are inspiring the 3 parts of the piece. And I just wanted to create this sense of really everything is always unstable. There is no moment. It's always something tries to happen, but then it cuts. It's like then you will hear we're going to hear I think about 2 or 3 minutes from the beginning of the piece, and even when it starts, it has these moments where you have things that are really chords or things that are very recognizable, maybe like major or minor chords, but they always get into this like fluctuations or something very, very unstable. That was my thought.
That's quite a challenge for Russell Eisberg, who is going to play that piece on the violin. And here it is. Music by Yair Kartlatak and beautiful performance by Russell Eisberg. Quite a challenge. Wonderful. Thank you very much to all. What I would like to tell you now is that what you heard from those composers today certainly whets your appetite for what is going to happen at the gala on Monday night. I mentioned that I heard a bit of the rehearsals. I saw the remarkable work by the Montreal Symphony Choir, and Andrew McGill, who is quite an extraordinary conductor. So I certainly invite you to hear what will happen on Monday. Thank you again for all the participants this morning, and please join us on Monday night. It's the 28th of October at La Maison Symphonique at 7:30. And the choir will be there along with musicians who are also members of the Montreal Symphony, and will premiere all the pieces of those winning composers. The tickets are available at Place des Arts, and you can also join us online because Medici.tv will also broadcast that event on Monday. I look forward to seeing you all there, and thank you for this delightful evening, gentlemen. Yeah.
רציתי להגיד ראשון, תודה לעזריאלי פונדיישן, שעוזרים לנו ממש להתקדם, להמשיך ולחפש.
I just wanted to thank first and foremost the Azrieli Foundation for supporting all of our work.
כל האנשים הנחמדים שמסביב איתנו, אני רוצה פשוט להודות. יכול להיות אחרי קונצרט לא יהיה לנו זמן.
And also all the wonderful people that are surrounding us. I worry that after the concert I won't see them or I won't have time to thank them.
במיוחד קולגות שלי שהם פשוט מוזיקאים מצוינים, ואני מבטיח להם, תגיעו בקונצרט ואתם תשמעו מוזיקה מצוינת פשוט.
And in particular, I'd like to thank my colleagues here sitting next to me who are all incredible musicians, and the concert will be a wonderful event and it will be well worth your
כל אחד
time.
משהו אחר באופי, אבל הכל זה מוזיקה.
Everyone unique and all together beautiful music.
ותודה גדולה למקהלה ומנצח. פשוט זה רמה, אני מקנא לקנדאים שיכולים לשמוע מקהלה ברמה כל כך טובה. אני מגיאורגיה, אני יודע מה זה מקהלה, אז אני ממש מקנא שיש להם מקהלה מצוינת.
And to thank as well the choir and their conductor. I that come from Georgia know what a good choir can sound like, and I'm jealous for this choir here in Canada.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bravo,
you.
maestro. Bravo, maestrissimo.
Thank
I
you.
think I love music too. We should talk a little more.
Any- Thank you.
תודה.